Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's Trey, and I want to talk about legacy characters. And the reason why I want to talk about legacy because I had a conversation on Twitter about legacies and how people want to ignore what legacy is with characters and need to understand like legacy means that the person inspired or they are taken after the person's death. In comic books, especially with DC comic books, a lot of characters are legacies of other characters. The JSA is a good example. They were the first, and other characters follow suit, which become their legacy. And I know a lot of people are upset at how DC and Marvel are doing legacy nowadays, but back in the day, legacy means that either the person had died and this is what was left behind, or the person was inspired by that person to take up their mantle or take up something that's close to their legacy of their will or their life. You know what I'm saying? So it gets back to when people talk about how the original Green Lantern and Flash, Alan Scott and Jay Garrick, people want to be like, well, those are normal, but Barry Allen and Hal Jordan aren't legacies of them. Well, yeah, they are legacies of them because Alan Scott and Jay Garrick are the first Green Lantern and Flash. You can get mad all you want to, but that is the truth. Those characters are legacies, and people accepted them because they were something new and different. They are still the legacies of Alan Scott and Jay Garrick, because if those characters didn't exist, Barry Allen and Hal Jordan, Green Lantern, wouldn't exist. Bad legacy from those characters is, hey, here's a black kid Flash that nobody asked for. Here is JoJo Mulligan, nobody asked for. Here's Teen Lantern, nobody asked for. Here's Jessica Cruz, nobody asked for. Here's Simon Baz, nobody asked for. You get what I'm saying? Those characters just came in without really earning the legacy of those characters. They're just like, hey, we need more Green Lanterns. Bam, here we go. We need more Flashes. Here you go. You know what I'm saying? You got Avery as well from The Flash. These characters, the reason why they're getting rejected by people nowadays, most people today, is because they're just there for diversity and inclusion points. They're not there because they want to be a good legacy of the characters or the heroes. They're not there because they're inspired by. If you go back and all those characters I named, most of them do not have anything to do or being inspired by any of the Green Lanterns before. You know what I'm saying? In the time of need or anything. It's just that, hey, one day they just decided, I'm going to be a Green Lantern. Or one day the universe rebooted and they said, hey, we need more Green Lanterns, we need more Flashes for no damn reason. When you already had an established legacy. You know what I'm saying? Even when Barry Allen and Hal Jordan died, they had gained new legacy characters in the form of Kyle Rayner and Wally West, who continued the legacies of the Green Lanterns. You get what I'm saying? So the legacies are there. Or just like we'll go back with the original legacy characters of the Blue Beetle. Because I don't know if people don't remember the Blue Beetle, but the original one was Dan Garrett. You know what I'm saying? So if you think about the original Dan Garrett Blue Beetle, and then of course you have the second one, Ted Kord, and then of course you have the third one, Jamie Reyes. A lot of people want to be like, well, they're not, somebody was trying to say, well, they're not really correlated to each other, because people forgot that Dan Garrett is the one who started the Blue Beetle, not Ted Kord. So when people see Ted Kord as the Blue Beetle and they see Jamie Reyes as Blue Beetle, they're like, oh, well, there's no correlation. But it is, because they both are the legacies of Dan Garrett, because Dan Garrett is the one who found the Scarab, who was able to tap into a little bit of the power of the Scarab to become the first Blue Beetle. Then that was passed on to Ted Kord, who was menteed by Dan Garrett. And then of course when he died and his company had blowed up, which held the Blue Beetle Scarab, which tapped into Jamie. Once the Justice League found him and they explained Ted Kord and Dan Garrett, he took up the mantle of Blue Beetle to honor those men. You get what I'm saying? It wasn't just like, oh, he's just here for for no reason. He was there because he was skating by Ted Kord's company. The company had blew up. The Scarab had fallen out, and it attached to Jamie, and it became like they became like a perfect host this whole time. Like, even though Ted never took it because he saw what happened with Dan Garrett, so he decided he was just going to be inspired by it. Legacy works in different ways. It's the same thing as like how people want to be like, well, it doesn't make any sense for Miles Morales. Miles Morales is Peter's legacy. I know a lot of people don't want it to be, but he is his legacy. It doesn't matter that he's from another universe or another Earth. He is still his legacy. Whether Peter is dead or not, Miles still got bit by the spider. He was inspired by Peter Parker to become Spider-Man. You know what I'm saying? And he has earned that. His stories, if people actually go and read Miles Morales' stories instead of just listening to what Eric July said and other people who really don't know anything about these characters, you can't tell me you read Miles Morales and keep saying that he's just Peter darker. No, that doesn't even make any damn logical sense, especially when the other legacy characters, you want to call them that, but for some reason, because this character happens to be black and Puerto Rican, and because Brian Michael Bendis made comments about, hey, now we got Barack Obama in here, wouldn't it be cool to have a black Spider-Man or whatever? Yeah, that was terrible of him to say, but at the same time, his writing justified Miles being there. It's just recent people now don't seem to know how to write Miles Morales, and that's a fault on them, and it's a fault on the other legacy characters that come out of nowhere, where they're supposed to be legacy characters, but it just seems like they're just there to try to replace the original characters without even any given cost, because most of them aren't even inspired by the characters. While Miles was inspired by Spider-Man, the recent ones like Ironheart, like what, like Miss Marvel, like, well, not Miss Marvel. Miss Marvel was inspired by Carol Danvers, but the all new, all different. Most of those characters weren't really inspired by their past characters. They were just there to kind of be like, oh, look, here's a diverse versions of those classical characters, because those characters happen to be white. While you have people trying to shit on a character who was actually inspired by the character that he took the mantle of. You know what I'm saying? Like, stop acting like we've never had other people play Spider-Man at the same time as Spider-Man. You know what I'm saying? Talking about, oh, he needed a title change. No, he doesn't. Just call his book Ultimate Spider-Man, just like you call Peter Parker's book The Amazing Spider-Man. That's it. But this notion of legacy means that the character has to die in order for a legacy to start. Not entirely. And just because a character isn't related doesn't mean that the correlation of that legacy couldn't be passed down. The reason why a lot of these legacy characters exist, and the reason why they worked all these years up until 2011, which is when Marvel and DC just completely forgot themselves, is because a lot of the writers who were writing them knew the nuance between character legacies and how to bring in and introduce new characters and how to correlate them to each other. I mean, hell, if you read the old classic JSA books before 2011, that's literally what will happen. You will have the older generation characters, and you would have their legacy with them, or characters inspired by them join the team, and they will teach them and mentor them. That's what people need to see, and that's what Peter Parker does with Miles Morales. He does show up and he does mentor him in a lot of things. So it's not like he's like, oh, I'm going to be a better Spider-Man than you. Peter has trained Miles Morales and has been inspired by Miles Morales. It's just all about the nuance of everything. I understand now that they're not doing the characters correctly with Legacy, because it does seem like they're just bringing in characters to replace the classical white characters, which is bad, which is terrible, which is definitely terrible. I definitely agree with that. But to sit up here and say that a lot of the characters back in the past don't have legacies, or they're not inspired by these, or certain characters aren't inspired by certain characters because they don't have any correlation or no relationship, doesn't make any sense. Legacy doesn't mean that you have to pass on to a person that you're connected through. Sometimes your living legacy is somebody that you inspired that you inspired, and they decided because you were such an impact on their life, they're going to take up the mantle, or they're going to take up your wishes and your wants, or figure out a way that they can do something while being inspired by the legacy and everything that you left behind. You get what I'm saying? That's what it means for legacy. It's just that nowadays, Marvel and DC don't have the nuance and don't have the writers who can do it. That's why a lot of these quote-unquote legacy characters today come out like ass hats, because of the terrible writing that's done, and why there are certain new characters who actually went through that growth that some people like to confuse because of the political charged nature of the fact that they're doing it so frequently nowadays, it doesn't make any logical sense. Because back in the day, the legacy characters were few and far between. You would never get, back in the day, you would never get about 20 brand new legacy characters coming out of nowhere, replacing the old cats. You know what I'm saying? But nowadays, that's what they're doing. Because I bet you in a couple of years, there's going to be a brand new version of almost half of the characters in DC and Marvel for no reason. And then you're trying to convince the audience that these characters are better. No, you don't need to convince the audience that these characters are better. You just need to convince them that they're their living legacies, that they've earned the right to either wear the mantle, or they earned the right to be part of this hero's world. You get what I'm saying? You don't have to necessarily kill off the character in order to create a legacy, because JSA showed you that. JSA has showed you that. Matter of fact, DC comic books before 2011 has showed you where you can still have these characters around and they still have living legacies. But you just need good writers. But yeah, those are my quick thoughts. Tell me what you guys think in the comment section below, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.